All right. Hello. How's everyone doing? For those of you that I didn't see 15 minutes ago. All right, cool. So today we are going to be able to jump right in and start talking about all sorts of stuff. So let's begin with the mentoring side of things. So did anybody not get an assignment? Okay, great. Who wants to take on one more person? I left one person off the list. So if I get a volunteer, great. If not, someone's getting an email from me after class. 10, 9, 8,
If
7.
they're a classroom person, I can do it.
If they're a classroom person.
Clinic
Okay.
people scare me.
Fair enough. I actually don't know if this is a classroom or a clinic person, so I will I'll check that out. And thank you very much, Laura. Everyone else, hold your breath. All right, cool. Okay, so I believe that, so did everyone get to make contact with their mentors or mentees in some capacity? Cool. I had a couple of really, really good questions over the weekend, and I think it's worth taking a couple of seconds to just kind of re-go over the mentoring assignments, because there are definitely some new things that are happening for the first time, and I want to make sure that everyone is in good shape. So first thing is that we've never done the mentoring for Dr. Cohen's classes before. So for those of you who have the everyone has either the 534 or the 539 people. So that what that ends up looking like is going to be a little bit unknown. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't want to overwhelm like the number of mentoring activities. So there's just no good way to do it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Molly.
So I got an email from you for a mentor for EDCI 557 and 539, and then another one for 539. Is that correct? I got one email with just for 534 and then another one with 2 classes.
So
that's what Christine and I got as well. So 2 for ABA 2, and then one of them.
Molly. Yeah, Molly, that is right. That is right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the assignments that are up on Moodle right now, and I'm going to edit it to make sure that it is clear, are specifically related to 547 activities. The research summary one, the DTS, or the research summaries, DTS quizzes, and the data collections. 534 and 539 activities are not up there yet. I think what I'm going, all right, you guys are there. I think what I'm going to do is put the 534/539 activities up, and you guys can choose, and I'll just figure it out, which ones you are graded on, which class you are graded on. So you can either be graded on 547 or 539. And if you just have 534, you're just graded on 534. All right? Does that make sense? And I don't need an answer like right now about can check the assignments off in the little square where we submit them. Do you guys like that? The little like I can change that, Catlin. Yeah, I can. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. All right. Sound good? Fair enough. Totally fair. Okay, cool. Do you want me to do that for all the activities? Like all the assignments? I turned that off.
Yes.
Okay. I turned that off for all my other classes because I hate seeing the gray because it only turns green once everyone has checked it off on your guys' end. So it's like really annoying for me because I never get to see the green. I just see gray the whole time. So it's super punishing for me because it means that no one's finished all their assignments. But yeah, I can do that for you guys. Okay, cool. So we'll just pick your class that you want to be evaluated on as a mentor. That's what you will submit the assignments for. If you have questions about the opposite class and want some feedback from me, by all means, reach out. I'm happy to talk to you if you need any help with those other assignments. But at the end, I will work the grading so that to make sure that you just get evaluated for one class. So when I put all of the Dr. Cohen assignments in there, it's going to add those points for all of you. So your grade on Moodle is never going to reflect anything real relative to your actual grade, which I know is annoying, but you shouldn't really look at that anyway because it's never accurate anyway. So if you're worried, if you need to check where you are, just let me know. I can get that for you pretty quickly. Okay, or just keep track of the assignments that you have and the points that you have for each of those and go from there. Okay. Vincent and Clarissa. Yeah, go ahead.
So if we decide to do Cohen's or yours, regardless, if we're working on mentoring someone from Cohen, should we go through her to ask a question, if anything, like we wanted to check to make sure this is how she wants it, or is it everything just goes through you and that's how we're working it?
No, by all means, if it's like you need clarification on a specific assignment and like formatting or content, yeah, send those questions to her. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. The question that I got today was more like general mentoring content that I thought was really appropriate, especially because you guys are in contact with these guys on the practicum courses. One of you, and you can add yourself if you want to, was reached out about whether or not you can or should mentor someone who asks about like the LCAR and wants more information about the LCAR. And the answer is absolutely. Like, yes, use every opportunity that you have to help these guys, to interact with them, to give them whatever information they are wanting. The scope of your mentorship is not limited to the finite assignments in these classes. Like if there is something related to the program, if it has to do with BDS modules, if they're interested in research or need help with an article, all of that is available to you. You are only required to do the research summaries, quizzes, data collections, and Dr. Cohen projects. But if you get reached out to for support in that way, I would love for you guys to be there for that person. If it's something you're uncomfortable with, you're not sure about, you don't really have time for or can't answer fully, by all means, respond and CC me or Dr. G or Dr. Cohen and kick some of those questions to us. We're happy to help, but I don't want to say recommend because you guys will take that as direction because I know you guys well enough at this point. But it's always helpful to give yourself more opportunities to mentor different aspects of the science, right? You're going to get hundreds of thousands of questions over the course of your careers. Having a safe space to answer as many as possible while you're here is just beneficial. All right. Cool. Okay, so as is, somewhat often the case, I asked you guys to bring some questions, I believe it was, about mentoring, some thoughts about mentoring for this week, but I can't remember exactly what the question that I asked of you guys. So who wants to go first? Who wants to share some, whatever it was that I asked last week? What did I ask last week? You guys know the assignment better than I do. Does anyone remember? I know I asked you guys something. Collective memory loss. That's your best tactic. Good job, guys. You've learned. I totally don't remember. Yeah, that's the assignment. I don't know. I asked it. What did I brought something up.
I think you asked about for us to look over the research summary form and to see if we had.
Oh yeah,
questions
good call.
on that.
Excellent. Ashley wins, and she outed all of you for not doing the assignment. Good work, Ashley. No, so yeah, let's start there. Everyone go ahead and pull up the research summary form and take a couple minutes and look over it. And we'll start there. I'll pause the recording so it's not that. Clarissa, go ahead.
Or list the number 6, list the tactic or tactics used. We're looking for a developed paragraph, right? Not just like X, Y, Z.
For that one, it's something that you want to expand over
Describe?
time. Yeah. So
Okay.
like if they're starting off just saying the tactic was token economy, great. If they are providing a little bit more, even better.
Great.
If they just start by listing it, I'm not going to deduct points on my end for that for either of you. But I would definitely encourage them, start by saying like, can you think about how you would describe this to someone? And then maybe that's something that you follow up on over the course of the semester. So by the end of the semester, seeing evidence of being able to describe a tactic would be great, especially since it is that in 547, it is the tactics class. Okay.
Right.
Good.
Same question for the principles of behavior. Same answer.
Yeah, principle, I'm a little bit more okay if they're just saying positive reinforcement, extinction, schedules, whatever it might be. All right. Okay, the big one, treatment integrity. Okay. You guys know I'm a stickler about this one. Dr. Cohen and I have had conversations. We agree that we have slightly different definitions, but at its core, we agree. Okay, so someone tell me what is not a complete answer for treatment integrity.
IOA.
Good job. IOA and treatment integrity are not the same. Why are they not the same?
IOA doesn't measure fidelity of implementing the independent variable. It just measures reliability of the data collected.
Good. So if I say, if my antecedent is what's 5 plus 5, and the person says 10, then we both put down a plus, we have 100% IOA. If I'm supposed to ask what's 5 times 5, then there's nothing in my IOA that speaks to the idea that I asked the wrong question. All right. What tool assesses or uses both IOA and treatment integrity?
TPRA.
TPRA. All right. So the TPRA is a tool that is designed to collect IOA data, but its primary purpose is that of treatment integrity. Okay. So what am I looking for when it comes to treatment integrity? There has to be, it doesn't have to be TPRAs, but there has to be some measure of ensuring that the treatment package, whatever it was implemented the correct way. Dr. G's least favorite form of treatment integrity is a pre-intervention checklist to make sure that all the components were in place. It's not the best, but it is a measure of treatment integrity. Everyone was trained using a treatment checklist to make sure that they could deliver the intervention with fidelity. Okay, fine, it's there, it's not perfect. There are lots of different ways of conducting treatment integrity. As long as your mentees are getting to that point of understanding that IOA does not qualify as treatment integrity, I think we'll be in a good place. What happens if treatment integrity is not defined or listed in the article?
In my own research summaries, I've just put that there was a lack of treatment of fidelity measured, and then put that in my limitations. And in future research, I add that the TPRA or a similar tool should be used.
Good, and Clarissa identified the same thing. You must identify that as a weakness. If your mentee says that treatment integrity, more than probably any other question, if your mentee says that treatment integrity is absent, I want you to go back to the article and verify that, okay? Because it's an easy thing to gloss over, and I want to make sure, because it is so different and not uniform from article to article, I want you to be able to make sure that they're not just missing it in some way, shape, or form, okay? Good question. Good. Okay, what else?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Send me the article and I'll see what I can do. Just shoot me an email with the title. Like I said, I'll call the library tomorrow and see if I can see what's up. All right. Okay, sorry, someone else.
Oh, sorry. I just had a question about the results section. How lengthy, like, should it be?
Yeah,
Review.
that's a good question, Brooke. I want you guys to have an understanding or be able to see that through the results section that they understand the results, not interpret, but that they're able to get the meaningful data, whether it's ranges and medians, if they're, let me put it this way. If it's meaningful to list all the participant data and they do that, great. If it's overkill to list all the participant data and they do that, I want you to go back, be able to go back and say, you probably didn't need to do that. You could have summarized this. All right. Okay. So it is going to be largely article dependent, but using the results as a measure of how well they understand what are the significant data to represent.
Okay.
It's a nebulous answer, but I think that that's a really good question, and that is going to be very individualized depending on each summary.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Next.
I might have missed it. Okay, so for the first part of what they're like, do we just send like a picture of an email or something for like them contacting us or anything like that for the first mentor thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Other than that, no questions.
I actually have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
So I've been caught with this in the past, so just want to make sure that my mentee is doing it correctly. How do I know off the bat whether it's single subject design or not?
Who wants to answer that? Anyone want to take a stab?
The use of statistics normally is used like in large group studies.
Yeah. So in single subject design, you're not going to have statistical significance. You're not going to have P scores and Z scores and T scores and that kind of stuff. You cannot, with a caveat, you cannot publish ABA research with statistical analyses. You there? You guys there? You heard that? Okay, sorry, it froze for a second. You cannot publish ABA research with statistical analyses. The caveat are meta-analyses where they're doing summaries of groups of articles. There are some particular studies that are done that are intentionally done to show larger effects, but they are rarely about specific interventions, okay? So multiple baseline designs, multiple probe designs, reversal designs, all of those types of designs, that's what we're looking for, okay? Cool. If you do see an article that uses statistical analyses, do not evaluate it. Kick it back to them and say it has to utilize single subject design. All right? Yeah, Clarissa.
I have a quick question. So one of my mentees emailed me a research summary for 547, I think it was. Yes, it was UNG's class. And she said that G recommended she do an annotated bibliography instead of a research summary. Am I to take that as that's from you guys and that I should look at it, or should I double check with y'all before proceeding?
Double check.
Okay.
So like just reach out to Dr. G there and just verify how you should look at it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So I have two mentees.
Yeah.
And they're both for 534. Is that your class?
No, that's Dr. Cohen's class.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I kind of forgot.
Nope, it's fine.
It's been a while.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good. So you guys should be getting your research summary one pretty quick if you haven't already. They were very antsy about getting their mentors so they could get them off, which is good. Means that hopefully they are ready to turn things in on time. I have told them that you guys will get back to them within a week. All right. So that is your timeline. If you are going to, especially if you know that things are coming up and you might be a day or two behind, you guys were all there not so long ago. Put yourself in their shoes, be in contact with them. Don't become absent mentors. All right. Stay in contact with them and really, really stay on top of that communication. Okay. Cool.
Derek, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have two mentees and I haven't received anything from either. I don't necessarily know like when the due dates are for their stuff, but am I supposed to like contact them and like ask them for it, or do I just leave that on them?
It's so kind of a little bit of both. I would, you've already reached out to them. Hopefully, I know you've been in contact with yours. If you don't get something in the next couple of days, I would say just remember, as soon as you're ready, send those things my way. And I don't know if I would say this yet, but like keep in mind that I'm asking you guys to put a timestamp of when you received it on there. They need to learn to respond to the contingencies. That's step one. But if it becomes habitual, then by all means stay on top of them. Okay.
Okay.
I also have a quick question or
Yeah.
comment. I'm sorry. I know
Yeah.
I'm full of them.
No, you're good.
So for our the mentee, how are we? So like I know there's normally a research summary due every week. There's some sort of probably DTS quizzes that are due. But should we just be like, okay, this is what's I mean, because I technically don't know what's due because they're on their end and I'm
Right.
on mine. So I know that it's mostly research summaries, but how should I go off that? Like if they I don't know what I'm trying to ask. Like if they're
I think what I think you're trying to ask is like you want to help them stay on top of things, but you don't know exactly how you're like how if they're behind or not, right? And that's somewhat intentional. I don't want you guys to be in a position where you're like, it's 12:05 past the due date, you haven't turned anything in. Here's my email to respond to you. I don't want you to be doing that. All right. If you go a few days, definitely more than a week or more without having heard from your mentee, and you're not sure if anything's due, what can you guys do to check in a reasonable way? All right, Clarissa asked for a schedule. Good. That's right from the start. That's a great thing to do. What else can you do? Weekly check-ins. Fantastic. Quick emails. Hey, it's been a few days since I heard from you. Wanted to see how things are going. Do you have anything for me to look over? Any questions that you might want to ask? Like there are really soft ways of staying present and identifying when to use those, when to push a little harder. That's what this is all about. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely, Courtney. I would love it if you guys were able to do some face-to-face stuff. All right.
Dr. Shannon, just as a
Yeah.
hypothetical question, but let's suppose that your mentee has asked for your cell phone number. Yeah, I mean, I think that I think just to keep it professional, just via email would be the best way to communicate. But what are your thoughts on that?
My thought on that is very few of you have my cell phone number. If you do have my cell phone number, it is in a professional capacity, not a school capacity, and there's a reason for that. That is a line that I drew years and years ago. Dr. G, on the other hand, I think all of you have his cell phone number, and he says, call me any day, time, and any whatever, call him at 2 a.m. He'll answer the damn phone. I don't think you should give out cell phone numbers. I want to make sure that you are responsible, though, with responding to your emails. But as Clarissa said, boundaries. If there are times where you want to appropriately carve out and say, I am not grading during this time, please don't pester me, use nicer language than that. By all means, do that. It is not appropriate for a mentee to turn in something 3 days late and then email you 24 hours later and say, did you get my work, right? That there's very much boundaries, very much space setting that needs to be established. And I think that is totally appropriate. Look, if you're okay giving out your cell phone number, I'm all right with that. I'm not going to tell you don't do it. But by no means feel that you have to. Okay. I will say that if there's one thing that is not representative of what a long-term professional mentor-mentee relationship would be, that's probably it. When you are out in the field, your mentees will have your cell phone number. Absolutely. Okay. No, that's a really good question. Okay, cool. Anything else for mentoring? Yeah, Chris.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
If we do have two and we might have said this and I missed it, but if we do have two, what do the submissions look like? Do we wait for both of them? Do we send what we have on the due date? How is that?
What you have when you have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. So my plan is to start every one of our meetings off with like a mentor-mentee check-in. I really want to make sure that you guys feel good about what you're doing, how you're doing, be able to answer any specific questions that come up. You know, your question may be specific to your mentor-mentee relationship. It may be you may be the only person that's experiencing it right this second. Whatever your question might be, you are not the only person, or that will not be the only time that question comes up. Every question that you guys have asked, I've experienced at some point. Every question that you guys ask, you yourself will experience at some point down the line as well. So airing as many of these questions as a group is, I think, far and away the best way to kind of get through and give you guys this good, high quality experience. All right. Cool. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So we are going to actually start talking about both research. We're going to get to some ideas for research projects, but we are going to focus on VBDT and specifically how it relates to Skinner's verbal behavior. So this is the thing that you guys have all been waiting years and years to learn about, right? Okay, how do I want to start? Hang on 1 second. I shut the door. He gets in anyway. That's the little kid. All right. Verbal behavior was put out as a theory years and years ago in the 50s, right? But prior to verbal behavior being written, language had not been part of the purview of behavior analysts, right? We were interested in positive reinforcement. We were interested in schedules of reinforcement, or reinforcement and punishment. We were interested in schedules of reinforcement. We were interested in the controlling variables of behavior. Radical behaviorism postulated that those principles applied to all overt behaviors as well as covert behaviors. Now we know that there is an inherent challenge in applying the principles of behavior to covert behaviors, but we've all seen in some way, shape, or form that that's possible. It wasn't 57. You can read the foreword for verbal behavior and get the actual the date. Skinner was posed with a question. Does anyone know what that question is? Let's see if I can pull it up really quick. Okay, so the question was, and I think that this is accurate, that a linguist was having dinner with Skinner. Skinner was making an argument that the principles of behavior applied to all behaviors, and the linguist asked, "Explain to me why I say this. No black scorpion is falling on this table. No black scorpion is falling on this table." And it's an unanswerable question, so don't search for the answer. But the linguist's argument was there is no direct contingency that can govern why I just said what I just said. And from there, Skinner begins his journey of evaluating language from a functional perspective. Why do we say the things that we say? And we get the result of that is obviously these groups of functional behaviors that are primarily vocal in nature, but do not necessarily have to be vocal. No black scorpion is falling on this table. I think that Skinner would say that that is a series of autoclitics based on particular motivating conditions, given the questions antecedents at the time, the prior histories of each of those individuals, yada yada yada. But for the first time, vocal behavior, language, is looked at from a truly functional perspective. As comfortable as we are sitting here today, talking about mands and tacts and conversational units and wants and needs and writer behavior, language for years and years and years was not looked at from that position of functionality. All right. It wasn't looked at as the effect on another. It wasn't looked at as this interaction between two individuals. Mediation by a listener was never an interest of linguists. Linguists are all about the word. They're all about language, the actual language itself. Language without a listener, though, is useless. Language without an interaction between two individuals is useless. Skinner's idea of behavior mediated by another, following principles of behavior, was groundbreaking. It truly was. Now, smear campaigns and politics and all these other issues, particularly by Noam Chomsky, killed verbal behavior as a dominant theory of language. And to this day, language is taught as a technical field, right? These are nouns, these are verbs, these are adjectives, these are modifiers, these are this, these are that. But we know, we are able to look at language from this different perspective that, especially as it's been selected for our population, is much more powerful than that technical aspect. Identifying language as a functional paradigm is just the utility of it for a special education population can't be understated, right? When you have adults that are fluent in language, then teaching how to use a listener to moderate your behavior through language doesn't really mean anything. But if it holds true that the principles of behavior can apply to language, then we are in a position to set those contingencies, again, as we are very familiar and comfortable with. From 1957 through to probably the mid to late 1980s, the concept of verbal behavior as a field of interest really did not expand. You will not find significant, every now and then you might find something, but you will not find significant lines of research in verbal behavior until the late 1980s, mid to late 1980s. what does anyone have an idea of what the first what opened that door? What might if we take verbal behavior as you guys know it, just the concept of verbal behavior, what do you think opened the door to verbal behavior as a meaningful, testable area of behavior analysis? Let me ask it another way. What is the easiest operant to teach, to test, to reinforce?
Mands.
Demand, right? Demand is this very concrete behavior with a very clear establishing operation, a very clear antecedent most of the time, and a very clear reinforcer. Once mands became a topic of interest, slowly things started to move a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further. But the problem was that mands are the only verbal operant that have that clear-cut, tangible reinforcer. When we start looking at other operants, it very quickly became apparent that, yes, we can reinforce a tact. We can provide food and we will get more names of objects. Much like we could with a man, much like we could with any other chained behavior. But there was this clear, it was very clearly a limitation in that adults do not emit most verbal operants for food. Adults do not emit most verbal operants for tokens. We don't even emit verbal operants for praise. So what are the other reinforcers? What are the natural reinforcers? How is it, if it's true that language falls under or is governed by the principles of behavior analysis, how can we arrange contingencies such that we can apply these principles to the language that we see? Verbal behavior development theory is not the only line of thought behind an analysis of verbal behavior. But to my knowledge, it is far and away the most robust theory in terms of application of natural reinforcers to language, the principles of behavior as it relates to language. All right. Over the next few weeks, we're going to go through and we're going to be working our way through verbal behavior development theory. But I want you also to start to read through the first chapter or two, if you want, on the side. We're not testing you, not doing anything else with it, but start looking through Skinner's VB. All right. And I want you to start not understanding how Skinner defined the operants, but I want you to try and have an understanding of how he looked at reinforcement, how he looked at the reinforcers of language, how he viewed the listener, not listener behavior, but the listener, and the role that the listener plays in the development of his ideas of how these principles played out. Within the Cabas line of research, the linchpin moment for verbal behavior development theory was I believe 1989 paper, I believe. Lodi and Greer, the speaker as own listener. Has anyone read that article?
Yes, I've read it. I've done some reviews on it.
Yeah, a couple of you probably have. And what I want as Dr. Greer tells the story, they were at this school called the Margaret Chapman School. It was a school for pretty severely delayed and handicapped individuals. There was an individual playing with a toy, and that individual was not speaking English, was babbling, basically. But the individual was taking these two toys, and Dr. Greer and Seema Lodi recognized that that individual, through these toys, the anthropomorphic toys, was functioning as both a speaker and a listener for their own operants. And through that, to those who were in our last class, used inductive reasoning to say, if you removed the listener, the speaker behavior does not continue. If you remove the speaker, the listener behavior does not continue. And it was watching one function as a speaker and a listener that truly opened the door to a testable line of research on the role between speakers and listeners. When you read through verbal behavior, if you read through verbal behavior, you will not see the conversational unit as a vocal verbal operant. That idea comes from verbal behavior development theory. That idea of the conversational unit, the role, the interaction between the back and forth interaction between two individuals functioning for each other as listener and speaker, that comes later. When Skinner looks at verbal behavior, he looks at one to another, and it kind of stops there. Mans and tax and sequelics, autoclitics. Verbal behavior development theory, through this deeper understanding of the natural reinforcers for verbal behavior, was able to expand that into the conversational unit. And I think that's a huge step. The second thing that verbal behavior development theory was able to provide is, for the first time, truly in a systematic way, not just identification of custom capabilities, that will come and that does come later, but looking at deficits, the absence of verbal behavior, and being able to, for each individual operant, specifically induce those behaviors. We learn later that the absence of some of these verbal behaviors prevent development in these more global areas. And that's where the custom capabilities come from. But the first thing we need to be able to do is test, can we apply principles of behavior to each of these operants in systematic, testable ways, such that children can do now what they could not before. Just like we teach a child to brush their teeth, just like we teach a child to make a sandwich, just like we teach a child to do anything. We can teach them to emit functional language. That had not happened in a systematic way to the degree that that verbal behavior development theory did until 2008, till that book was published. All right, that is the first training manual, truly training manual for how to change verbal behavior. There's a little bit here, there's a little bit there, there's a little bit here, there's a little bit there. People had done things before, but no one had put the whole picture together. Assessing verbal behavior is different. Assessing number of tacks, number of autoclitics, assessing those things, that had been done before. The VB map is not new. Other verbal behavior assessments are not new. But what to do with it, what to do in their absence, that was a new question. And the fact that something can systematically be done using simple principles of behavior was radically new. Still, I know people misinterpret and for lack of a better word, bastardize the results and findings and analysis that of the verbal behavior line of research into arguments of why speaker behavior is more fundamental than listener behavior, or why mans are more important than tacts, or hierarchical relations, and all these things that show a misunderstanding of what it means to control verbal behavior. Meanwhile, the speedboat that is the verbal behavior development theory line of research continues to blast away through naming, through observational learning, through the chasm that is speakers on listener behavior, in ways that have the opportunity to both fundamentally change how we look at language, but also what we do about it in an applied sense. Now, verbal behavior development theory is not the only theory that looks to advance a behavior analytic notion of language and what controls language and what the verbal operants are. There is another dominant theory out there that is related, is different, has people that steadfastly believe in it, and have people to. There we go. You're back? We're good? Okay, good. And that is relational frame theory. All right. Hopefully you guys got that whole thought process. Relational frame theory, we will talk about later in the semester. It's a challenge to, you guys are really choppy for me. All right, I see fans going. You there? We're good? Okay, hopefully we can hang on for the last 10 minutes. Relational frame theory is, it actually is a challenge to square RFT with verbal behavior development theory, because they are looking at initially, at least, they are looking at two completely different concepts, right? What you have to understand about those two is verbal behavior development theory looks to take Skinner's verbal behavior and put an experimental line of research into it, right? So it really looks to breathe life into verbal behavior. What relational frame theory, at least initially, was attempting to do was redefine verbal behavior, was to fully redefine what a verbal operant was. Relational frame theory does not care about mands and tacts and autoclitics and conversational units. They might care a little bit about autoclitics. They may care too much about autoclitics. But relational frame theory, and when you read the book, they explicitly say this. They look to completely change what the concept of a verbal operant is. A verbal operant to a relational frame theorist is still mediated by listener and speaker, but it is by nature untaught. And the first time that an operant becomes, or contacts, the first time that a behavior contacts reinforcement through a relational frame paradigm, it no longer is verbal. Now, that doesn't make sense when you're counting mands and counting tacts and trying to shape autoclitics and increase conversational units. So we are looking at two completely different definitions of what it means to be verbal and emit verbal behavior for those two camps. We will talk about relational frame theory more when we get to naming and that area of verbal behavior development theory. But for the most part, we will be focusing on development of induction of and controlling variables for verbal behavior development theory. Okay? How does that sound? Good? All right, cool. Let's take the last 10, 15 minutes that we have, and let's talk a little bit about research and research topics and ideas for this semester. So, okay, so the research summary form. So let me end with that, okay? All right, cool. Yeah, and Maddie, when you're looking at naming and how RFT fits into that, you really have to, before you can jump into that, you really have to read and get an understanding of what RFT theorists are talking about when they talk about a verbal operant, all right? You also have to be able to see, and again, this is jumping ahead, but you have to be able to see how naming is a relational operant. All right, so that goes both ways, and we can talk more about that later. Okay. All right. Cool.
That's good.
So, yep. So, research ideas, research topics for this semester, and I do. Let's see. All right, so no one's posted anything yet, and that's totally fine. I want you guys to, my interest when it comes to verbal behavior, and I'm not forcing you into my interest, but do what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in the reinforcers as it relates to different verbal operants. Mands are boring because we know what the reinforcers are. They're easy. We know what to do. You do speaker immersion. You do something along those lines. You get a bunch of mands. Cool. All the other operants are so much more complicated and so much more complex and require a much deeper understanding of what it means to condition reinforcers, to have a wide community of reinforcers, and how we use one reinforcer to work with another. All right. Now, that is the same concept that governs a man, right? The more reinforcers we have, the more mans we're going to have. The more mans, the more reinforcers we have, the stronger our EOs will be, the more long-lasting our EOs will be, the easier it will be to contrive situations where we can get a child to ask for something that they want. That same concept applies to tax, applies to autoclitics, applies to sequilics, applies to conversational units, applies to writer behavior, applies to all of these different verbal operants, but in a much more challenging way. When we look at the induction of verbal behavior custom capabilities, I want us to be able to focus on and analyze the role that those reinforcers play, those new reinforcers play in the development of these operants, such that they are able to generalize or abstract, such that they are able to be used in natural settings. And I want us to be able to see where our supervisors and all of our programming has fallen short in the area of verbal behavior based on the types of reinforcers we use, the contingencies that we set up, the antecedents that we use. We need to be able to recognize that looking at all of you and having an understanding of most of the settings that you guys are in, we need to be able to recognize our, I don't want to say failures, but where we have not done what we need to do to set the stage for robust verbal behavior to develop. Does that make sense? You guys see that? I want us to really be looking at what are the fundamental controlling variables for verbal behavior, or the different operants. What are the pieces that we have in place? And where has our understanding of verbal behavior fallen short, such that our children are not actually getting the interventions that we need in the way we need them? The one that jumps to mind for me is observational learning. Has anyone induced or used the yoke contingency game board to induce observational learning before?
I have.
A couple of you guys, yeah? Okay. That is a topographically pretty simple intervention to put in place. The components of that make it run are so complex, it's almost impossible to just run it as it's written without that understanding of conditioning and conditioning EOs and conditioning interactions and relationships. That whole thing is about conditioning. We all know how hard conditioning is, right? We don't run those things right because we don't understand the contingencies, because it's very challenging. And that's going to make it seem like I'm talking poorly of our BCBAs, and that's very much not the case, right? It's very, very challenging to get all of our line technicians to understand something like that at a deep level. I want to make sure that you guys are able to rise to that next level and understand those different contingencies. Listener immersion, that's another one. Listener immersion is not about, you know, teaching 20 questions and responding to them quickly. Listener immersion is about the best success story that I had with listener immersion was when it was my first year in grad school. We got all the way through it to where you have you're playing it's supposed to be that you're playing the recording of the different directions, right? We didn't quite have that set up in time, so we got 4 of us and like put us in an arc, and we put the kid in the middle, and we rapid fire gave him directions every 2 seconds, and the joy on his face. Yes, he had 4 adults and it was just him, and he got all the attention in the world, but he was so excited to listen. Think about that. The goal of listener immersion is not to have your student follow directions. It's to condition listening such that listening is a reinforcer. That changes how a child learns. Not what a child learns, how a child learns. And that's what those custom capabilities are about. They're not about new behaviors. They're about conditioning new reinforcers. So as you guys think about your research topics for this semester, don't think, yes, you're going to have to go through the behavior. I understand that. But don't be focusing on the verbal behavior, the language that you are teaching to your child. Be focusing on what are the reinforcers that are not currently present that have yet to select those behaviors. There's a reason we don't teach non-speakers to tact. The goal of intensive tact is not to teach a child to speak. It is to take behavior that is already present, tie it to a reinforcer, or that reinforcer such is selected more often because it is now contacting a reinforcer. That's where our research is going this semester. All right. Do you guys see that? I'm taking off my kid gloves in this class. I'm going to speak at the highest level I can, and you guys are going to keep up with me. All right. If I say things that you need me to back up on and you have questions about, tell me to stop, ask me to clarify. All right. I'm going to speak at a high level in this class, and you guys are there. You guys are going to keep up with me. I know you are. Okay. Sound good? Okay. For the next week or over the next week, the forum that's on there says research topics and proposals. Worry a little bit less to start about the research or the proposal idea, but I want you guys, I want that to be a conversation. All right. Everyone needs to post at least once thinking about this. I'm not sure. These are some of the things we're working on. I know in the last class I said don't use the kid in front of you's problem to pick your research. That's going to be more of the case in this class, and that's fine. Use that as a discussion to help each other. You guys are, for the most part, in different locations. If you have participants that fit together and you have related research interests, I am more than okay with working together on these projects. All right. When you write joint papers, I do have specific requirements about what has to be done individually and what can be done together and how we go about that. But everyone's participants are open to everyone. Everyone's research questions are open to everyone. If you get to that point and you need help facilitating it, especially if it's across sites and geographic regions, come to me and I will help facilitate people working together. All right. Don't come to me with nebulous, hey, I want to work with somebody else on this topic. Like, you guys got to figure that out. But if you need a place to walk everything through, happy to do that. Okay. All right. I've spoken with Dr. G about my idea of doing like a specific research night where we can jump on Zoom and kind of talk through lots of different things. I still want to do that. I still need a couple of weeks to get that in order. I'm looking at my calendar for Wednesday right now, which is when it would be, and it's already got 6 things on it. So it's not going to be this week. I can try to aim for next week, but no promises. But Mardi Gras right after that, that's kind of what I'm thinking about. And by that point, people should have projects set up and running. But in the meantime, don't feel that you can't reach out to me, that we can't set up times, and I'm more than happy to do that. Okay. And I know I owe a couple of you confirmation of times for this week, and that's coming right after class. But other than that, how do we feel? Are there any questions based on that hour-long, whatever it was, lecture?
How many participants should we have for this project?
I would love if we could move in the direction of, and I'm not going to say participants, but I'm going to say 3 replications. So a replication can be participants, it can be behaviors, it can be settings, it can be reversals, it can be whatever you need it to be. But 3 replications, I think, is my target. We're not all going to get there. You will not fail this class or that paper if you do not get to 3. But that is my goal. That is my goal for you, such that we can get to publication quality.
I was about to say, when you said that, my heart sank right into my stomach.
And I'll work with you guys. I'll work with you guys. Okay. On a little bit more of a personal note, I'm always working in my head on different research projects. I do not keep those secret. I do not hide those from people. I would love you guys to be a part of some and any and all of those projects. If we get in positions where we are talking about some of those ideas, I don't want you to use those ideas for this class. I want you guys to be able to get to the concept of a research project, verbal behavior project on your own for this class. But as the semester goes on, if those are things that you want to talk about in those Wednesday classes, I'll be talking about some research ideas that I have, and we can kind of snowball from there. Okay. All right. Cool. Any other questions? All right. You guys are wiped. I'm wiped. It's 8 o'clock. All right. Have a good one. I will see you next week. Right? Yep. Yes. And yeah, send me your questions if you need to. Have a good one, guys.